and good morning, Rural Voices. Glad to be with you. Let me also give thanks and acknowledgement to Kristen for her work at Club 20 and also Kathy for her work in Progressive 15. Glad to be with you this morning. I think it's still morning. I believe it is. Also want to introduce and acknowledge our Division of Local Government Director, Chantal Unfuck, who I'm sure most of you know. I'm going to give credit to Chantal. You have me this morning because Chantal didn't want to do this. So thanks, Chantal, for the opportunity. But of course, it's always good for the Executive Director of the Department of Local Affairs to engage and spend time with what I believe are our customers, primarily rural Colorado. Most of you are mayors, commissioners, maybe some council members, some new appointed officials in the audience, members of our congressional delegation staffs. Good to see you. This is an important opportunity for DOLA to give you the latest and the greatest of what's been occurring. You know, as I think about rural, by the way, I don't have a PowerPoint. Maybe that's good, maybe it's not. I wanted this to be a conversation. So I'm going to share a few remarks, some updates, and I really would like to just hear from you. I mean, after all, this is Voices of Rural Colorado. I want to hear, we need to hear the latest questions and also comments. But as I think about Colorado, and I think most of you in our rural counties represented by your associations also probably think about this, but I want you to know that I really think rural Colorado is the brand and image of Colorado. When folks look at Colorado from the outside, they often think about the counties, the communities that are in our mountain areas that offer recreational outdoor values, offer a way of life that's very unique and different than living in the urban Front Range area. And really, that's really part of, I think, the work that DOLA has to continue to ensure we're doing effectively for all of you, is trying to preserve and enhance that rural existence, that non-metro existence. And certainly it is a balancing act. It's a very challenging balancing act. But because we have a Department of Local Affairs that really is dedicated to strengthening local communities through a variety of resources, financial as well as technical, that's really what we need to continue to work together to do. So in general, I just wanted you to have an opportunity to hear that perspective and understand that that's really where we're coming from. Let me also just begin by acknowledging the most recent role that DOLA has played literally within the last 2 weeks or so is the response and recovery to the Boulder County Marshall Fire. Those of you who live in areas where DOLA has played a role in recovery understand that DOLA has a position that we clearly are working through our regional managers throughout the state to engage, be embedded in local city, county offices, working with electeds to ensure that there's a continuity of governance and also help to begin to explore what those ideas and thinking patterns need to be in the recovery process. If it's been wildfires in the past, or floods, whatever the issue might be, DOLA has always been there. So I want to give acknowledgement to the fact that we are on the ground in Boulder County as we speak. In fact, none of our regional managers are here this morning, and that they're all being deployed to deal with those issues on a regular basis. So we are engaged, we're in the forefront of that, and we will continue to be as we go forward. Let me begin just talking about where we have been the last year, almost, well, 2 years now, almost 2.5, with managing the COVID-19 pandemic. I know that's been a big, difficult challenge for you in local governments. It certainly has been for us in DOLA. Much of the federal resources that have funneled through the state or to the state from our congressional actions have funneled through the Division of Local Government. Let me remind all of you and thank you, those commissioners and local council folks and mayors that received CARES Act dollars. You remember the CARES Act? You know, we've had so many new resources of federal programs coming our way. That the CARES Act was that first round of dollars that occurred back in the early part of the pandemic in March of 2020. I'm happy to report today that I'm going to say 100%, but we might be more like 99.9% of the CARES Act dollars that the governor allocated through an executive order, and that was about $275 million. 100% or 99.9% of that has been reimbursed to local communities. And that happened because of you and your staff's ability to take those dollars. And we had a few rounds of additional dollars that came, that most of that ended up going to help special districts, which are part of our local government community as well. But so now, almost 2 years after the rollout of the CARES Act dollars, those dollars have been completely reimbursed. So thank you all for that, and your staffs for that work. Most recently, of course, the American Rescue Plan Act has been on the forefront. There has been additional dollars rolled out to local, what we refer to as non-entitlement communities. The first tranche of that, I think, was $265 million. That has gone out. Is that the right number, Chantal? $265 million. First tranche. Second tranche is coming later this year, I think sometime in late spring or early summer. If you're a large enough community, in fact, I don't think many of the trade organizations memberships here today necessarily represent our large metro counties or front range counties, but those counties and communities received a direct appropriation from the federal government. The rest of the non-entitlements, those dollars directly flow to local communities. Now, what are you using those dollars for? Well, some of that we hope that we'll have a conversation about as we go forward here, but I did want to now start sharing with you how some of the ARP dollars that came in early, that were appropriated to DOLA through the last legislative session, the 2021 session. Let me tell you a little bit about that. There's been a lot of talk this morning, our partners at CHAFA, about the housing world. And I've been in this business a long time, and I really have to say, in the course of the last maybe 5 to 10 years, there's been just a groundswell of focus, finally, put on the need of affordable housing in our state. Certainly because of the economic conditions that have driven the cost of rents, the cost of average home prices up in our state, and there's other places certainly around the country that are having similar experiences. But because we do have dollars today that are available to help support local communities that have been impacted as a result of the COVID-19, we have dollars today. And let me share a few of those updates with you. On the Rural Economic Development Initiative front, we received an additional, that READY program. Most of you are probably aware of that, what that acronym stands for. But we received an additional $5 million of dollars on top of the READY initiative that we already appropriated on an annual basis. That $5 million has been deployed. And I think there was a total of about 20 or so communities that made applications through 2 rounds. These dollars were intended to help communities through their economic transitions, do economic planning, generate jobs, help small businesses expand, help promote entrepreneurship, a variety of creative programs all over the state. So if you're not aware of the READY grant that your communities received, check in with us. We'll make sure that you, as an elected, are in fact aware. I'm sure your staffs are aware. In addition, we received an additional $5 million to continue support the middle mile broadband program that DOLA initiated a number of years ago. I'm not going to go into the particulars of that because I think most of you understand that access to broadband internet services is a key economic driver of rural Colorado, and it needs to certainly continue to be expanded upon. It's important to higher education. It's important to medical access. It's important to job development, economic development, and K-12, as well as just general use that all of us now need to be connected to the internet. Now, today's values in broadband are reliability, redundancy, and high speed. We've done a lot of work over the years in broadband, but this additional $5 million will be available to local communities to continue to have us support the middle mile program, which is oftentimes the category of investment that ISPs choose not to make, because economically it's often not the best economic decision for them, because there's no assurances that that investment will have a return. So DOLA has stepped in over the years to promote and fund that middle mile installation and infrastructure related projects to ensure that rural Colorado continues to have that. That program is, I think, currently open. We're looking at applications right now. And then there's additional federal dollars flowing in that our broadband office in the Office of Information Technology will actually be administering, and certainly DOLA will be at the table there as well. Also, we received an additional $5 million to continue to expand upon our renewable energy program for local governments. We launched that a number of years ago, obviously exhausted dollars, but because it was such in high demand, we continued to receive an additional $5 million in legislation. And all those, the entire $5 million has already been awarded. Several of those awards have gone to small local communities for things like solar energy grid systems, improving energy cost reductions by making 100% of alternative energy being used by local buildings, such as office buildings for local government, as well as school districts. So that's good news. Let me leap to housing quickly and just give you a quick update with some of the bills that have already started to roll out related to ARP dollars. We had House Bill 1329, which was almost $100 million that was appropriated to the Division of Housing, which they have already started to roll out. A lot of that is done and will be done in tandem with some of our partners at CHAFA. Three categories of the $1329. One, largely it has already started, which is an opportunity to invest these dollars in existing affordable housing funding programs like CDFIs and other kinds of programs that might exist around the state. Capitalize those programs so those local governments can then make the decisions about how those dollars can be deployed in the local communities, along with nonprofit housing organizations, housing authorities, or other private development. The other category is related to the federal tax credit program, which we actually had some experience, DOLA did, in the post-2013 floods, where we sat with CHAFA in analyzed or is it underwrote or underwritten? I think it's underwritten. Underwritten the analysis of those tax credit projects together. So oftentimes those tax credits come to the division, projects come to the Division of Housing to have a gap filled. So what we're doing collectively at the start of the current round of tax credit programs that CHAFA is rolling out, and I think Geraldine covered some of those tax credit timelines, is that we're doing that together. We're using some of the $1329 to do that up front, so that gap doesn't have to come later to the DOH. It's going to be supported on the front end, and that's going to create an additional layer of housing affordability throughout the state. The other program that we did receive additional dollars to the legislature is House Bill 1271, another creative kind of incentive program for local governments. A couple categories of funding in that world: planning grants for local governments to think through, either locally through local community engagement or consultant hiring, to help them think through how to reduce the barriers that are preventing affordable housing construction from occurring more quickly. Things, land use or other kinds of zoning codes. We have awarded close to $3 million already in that program to about 20 communities. A lot of those are small rural communities around the state that are taking a strong look, because if they can make the changes in their local land use decisions, the reward, if you will, in the context of 1271, is they can get an additional grant award for housing, affordable housing construction and development. The other categories in the 1271 are around technical assistance, very similar to what Gerald Lynn supported earlier. We're going to be deploying resources to local communities to help them work through putting together the capital stack and understanding what those housing needs are in their community. Frankly, kind of a hand-holding opportunity for smaller towns and communities that really lack the capacity to put those kinds of affordable housing deals together. So those are programs that we are rolling out currently, and I'm happy to say that just yesterday we provided an update to our legislative committees of reference, local government committees, both the House and the Senate, and the housing metric that we are going to be judged by, at least the current performance year. We have proposed to create 10,000 new housing units by the end of June of this year. We're halfway there. That's good news. Halfway there for the first 2 quarters of this program year. And we do have additional dollars on the way. There was interim committees that met over the summer. One of those was the Affordable Housing Transformational Committee. They determined how $400 million of additional affordable housing dollars should be deployed. There is a report that will be coming out, I think, within the course of the next week. The legislature will be looking at that report and crafting legislation that will push out those additional dollars around the state in the form of a variety of directions, but most importantly, I think, to small communities in our rural parts of the state through grants to support local communities and nonprofits to make application to receive dollars to continue to enhance their abilities to make affordable housing occur in their communities. So let me conclude with that. Probably a few more things I could talk about, but primarily I want to hear from you. You probably have some questions, but I'd like to hear a bit more about how we're doing at DOLA. And let me just say this: thank you for your cooperation, collaboration, and partnership, because really DOLA exists for you, and we know that we couldn't do our work. I mean, our work is intended to support you in the kind of needs you have, fiscal as well as technical around the state. So with that, let me conclude, and let's have some dialogue. Yes, sir.
Brian, could you kind of expand on that $400 million in additional funding, and how exactly is that allocated? Is it per county, region? It's kind of sparks my curiosity.
Sure, you bet. Well, it's a good question, and I sat as a member of that task force along with several legislators on both sides of the aisle. The $400 million was allocated in a variety of categories, and to, as I mentioned, direct grants and support for local governments as well as nonprofits. Some of that was earmarked for, or will be earmarked to help improve the attraction of modular housing or manufactured housing industries into the state, and help support those that are already existing expand, because we believe there is a need for lower cost housing construction and being able to build housing components year round in a shelter, a warehouse, and then move those out to sites make a lot more sense economically, as well as our ability to get those done on a annual basis. But I don't have all the particulars, but there was probably a dozen different ideas that will be in the report that the legislature will take and either put in the form of legislation. So the dollar amounts made up of the $400 million will be allocated through legislation. So most of those programs probably will be assigned to the Department of Local Affairs, our Division of Housing. So there'll probably be application processes that involve, there's no direct, at least I'm not going to second guess the legislature. They might do that, but they might direct some of that money just automatically to local governments. But at the moment, that particular direction was not advised as part of the recommendations.
Are there, oh, we have one question here.
Hey there, how are you? Good to see you.
So you had mentioned a little bit about broadband and then also mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure act at the federal level, which provides more grants for broadband for rural communities. And then the governor recently made a comment about setting aside $100 million to match for state grants, to match those federal grants. Can you give us any insights as to what DOLA may be doing with the governor in terms of strategizing on those dollars?
Sure. What I do know about that approach is that there is a supplemental request into the Office of State Planning and Budget as part of the governor's FY23 budget that will act as the match. So for a variety of other infrastructure related projects, not just broadband, but that is one of the categories of funding that the state is stepping up. And this is the competitive grant portion. There's some, I know our congressional delegation might have a little bit more perspective and insight. I mean, it's just an enormous amount of opportunity in the broadband field for rural parts of our state. But that particular category, we're going to ensure that there is local match through state dollars to help support some of the broadband competitive applications. DOLA is a partner with the office, the broadband office. And by the way, one of our rural communities, soon to be state broadband office director, Brandy Ritter, who I think now is maybe former town of Eagle city manager, is the broadband office director. So we'll be working with the broadband office, our partners at CDOT on as well in collaborating on how we could be most effective in pursuing those competitive grants. Thanks, Carla, for the question. Other thoughts? A lot happening, a lot going on at DOLA. By the way, that number of federal appropriation, some of the dollars I already alluded to, is 1.3 billion of additional federal dollars flowing through the Department of Local Affairs for a variety of competitive housing programs, as well as other kinds of local community development grants. Some of that's already started to roll out, some of the programs I already mentioned. But it's all, there's a lot there and a lot opportunity as we go forward. Anything else? Kathy's going to give me the hook.
No, I'm going to thank you very much, Rick. We appreciate you coming and talking to us. Next, we have a great slate of speakers, a panel that's going to talk about energy trends in rural Colorado, sponsored by Excel Energy, and moderating the panel will be Christian Reese from Club 20, and she will introduce the panelists and get us started. So if all the panelists want to come forward, and you have little name tags so you know exactly where to sit.
Thanks, Kathy.